Hello and welcome back or welcome to the channel. I'm Loudguns and in today's video we're going to be talking about crafting. Earlier this week we had a tech preview showing the crafting mechanics, and while sadly due to the time it came out and having a real job, I didn't get quite as much time with it as I would have liked, it did give a decent taste of things to come, so I figured it was worth just doing a quick rundown. Obviously this is just a first iteration and I'm sure that CIG are planning a number of additional playtests. Let's just hope we don't have a similar amount of time between tech preview and live as we saw with engineering. Because while things are a little on the raw side with the crafting mechanics, I will go into a few concerns, I do think it's an essential element of driving cool industrial-led gameplay, and I think as many people getting involved with it at this stage is best. I'm going to try and keep this one short and sweet, so no intro, but still hit pause and grab that cup of tea if you need it. Now, due to the nature of this release in the Evo Tech Preview channel, we're not allowed to use any footage from the build in this vid, so I'm afraid you're going to have to make do with some of the pictures from SitCon and my dulcet tones. Within the preview, all players had access to a small fabricator like we saw in the SitCon footage, and some basic resources to just get you started trialling a few crafts off the bat. The fab itself is small enough to move around with a handheld tractor beam, and it can be placed into a corner of your hangar or loaded onto the grid of a ship. Spares are available from refinery stations in case something happens to your one, or if you want to set up a proper factory line. Something which I was really relieved about was the way in which the fab will pull resources straight out to your local inventory. You don't need to directly place resources into the fab itself, and similarly crafted items that are too big will deliver straight into your local inventory. So given CIG's love of realism and interaction, I was imagining until this point that they would make us put every little box into every little port. When it comes to the crafting UI, there's been a slight upgrade on what was shown in the SitCon screenshots. I personally found it a lot cleaner and easier to read. With the ability to see your available resources for each slot from your inventory over on the left hand side once you've selected a recipe. There was a separate tab to view available blueprints, and the search functionality in that worked really well. It's really good to see them implementing useful stuff like search bars right from the start. We also had categories that essentially matched the ones that you would see in a freight elevator, but during the test we just had the opportunity to make armor, FPS weapons, and ship weapons. Importantly, in the live examples, resources were measured in CSUU as opposed to SCU. So the resource demands for making smaller items are not as intensive as what was shown in the SitCon screenshots. However, I wouldn't go as far as to read too much into what's in the preview build. CIG could easily just have been reducing the amounts to ensure more testing of the basics. They will undoubtedly be subject to change. The fab can also deconstruct items, giving you a refund of 50% of the resources used in each craft. One of the major changes that will come about as a result of the introduction of crafting is resource quality, with resources having a numerical value which seems to go up to 1000. And the distribution is random, so there's no specific locations where high tier resources are going to spawn, and even within a cluster of mineable rocks you could get some really good taranite and some poor quality taranite or gold or copper. Now this is an area I'm really not sure about. This numerical quality system was similar to the one that Last Oasis used, and I'm told that I should also take a look at Star Wars Galaxies as clearly it's influenced this crafting system. But in Last Oasis it certainly led to some issues. Primarily, resource stacking and management is made an absolute nightmare. If we go out and mine a bunch of iron for example, we might get some 500, some 700, some 800 and some 900 quality, which then wouldn't merge. I would imagine this is going to be mitigated to some degree by the refining process, with most folks likely hiving off super high quality mats for separate refining, while then bulking the other stuff and consolidating it into an averaged out quality level. However, refining gameplay obviously wasn't part of this test, so this is me speculating to some degree, though we do see accumulated quality in the SitCon refining example. The other question that springs up is what, if anything, lower quality mats will be used for. Again, there was mention that some resources will be used as secondaries in refining processes where the quality of the material doesn't matter, but surely this application will be quite limited. I suppose if I were to hazard a guess, there will likely be demand for large quantities of bulk commodities for construction, and you could always just sell lower quality mats for credits while keeping the higher quality ones for crafting. The other thing that could play into this, where we do need to see CIG's long-term plans, is in terms of item recovery. If, and it's a big if, and not one I'm 100% sure where I stand on given the improvement in gameplay that Tier 0 item recovery has yielded, but if players were to more regularly burn through items again, then there could be demand for things like weapons that are above shop quality but not top tier crafts, creating a mass market for mid tier crafted goods, and therefore the medium quality resources needed to craft them. Something that does make me think though is whether a slightly simplified approach to resource quality might not be better, and particularly one that is more dependent on player skill rather than RNG. Don't get me wrong, there are solid arguments for RNG. It keeps you out there seeking for high quality mats, and it adds that little dopamine hit of finding some over 900 copper that you needed for the wiring of your favourite laser repeaters. And making it spawn at random reduces the chances of people just camping one spot and large orgs locking smaller groups out of the good stuff. My concern though is that you're going to get the same sort of thing with mining, for example, that you did back in the Quantanium days, where everybody's just going to ignore 99% of the rocks that they scan, because they're just going to be focused entirely on getting the high quality mats. Personally, I think I'd prefer to see a simpler quality spectrum. Something like the 3-level damaged, worn, pristine levels we see in medals currently in game, and a skill-based test to it. How about if when you crack a rock, the skill with which you do it determines the quality of the resources you pull? Let's just say, if you overcharge it and you break it with some red in the bar, you've just ruined your chances and you're stuck with low quality. Crack it perfectly and you're gonna yield some good quality. And then maybe with a little RNG chance, you could get the totally high quality shard of the resource. This could then filter into equipment builds with certain lasers, modules and gadgets enhancing your chances of a perfect drop, at the cost of making it trickier to get a clean break. Similarly for things like the Apex Worm, it could make a difference in terms of what weapons you use or how accurate you are when you're hitting it. This would also maybe feed into ship choice mattering, and certain ships having life past just as being a stepping stone to something bigger. So an Orion might be the logical choice for when you just want to yank in as many mats as you can for a large construction project or mass crafting, but a Prospector or a Mole would let you finesse your breaks and maximise your chances of high quality materials. But this is one of the coolest things about Star Citizen. Hopefully more tech previews will be rolled out in short order and left up for longer periods of time, allowing us to get stuck in and more players to test the mechanics and provide feedback. While a lot of games are only put into player hands at a closed beta stage, where realistically things like mechanics are locked in, CIG let us play with mechanics at a much earlier stage, one where feedback still actually matters. So I would strongly encourage you, if you care about crafting mechanics, to hop on to whatever playtests come up and voice your opinions constructively as much as you can. So with all that said, thanks for watching this short vid, let me know what you think down in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you next time.